So, what if the biggest risk in your grant proposal is not the technology, the budget, or even the consortium? What if the real risk is that just ignores the territory? In this episode of InnovEU, I speak with Francesco Molica. He's the director of EURADA, the European Association of Development Agencies. Francesco works at the intersection of regional development, innovation policy, EU decision making, and his message is really important. Europe's competitiveness will not be rebuilt only from Brussels. It will not be rebuilt only from national capitals. And it will not be rebuilt only inside the usual frontier technology hubs. It will be rebuilt or not, or lost in the regions, because regions are where EU strategies become real, or where they don't and they quietly fail. Today, we talk about why regional development agencies matter, why EU projects often struggle to create territorial impact, and why the future of cohesion policy could either reduce regional disparities or make them worse. And if you are preparing a grant proposal, this episode gives you one interesting test. Are you building a project that looks good on paper? And does it also leave capabilities behind or not? Or only looks good on paper? Before we move to the interview, one quick note. If you are preparing a grant proposal and your Horizon Europe proposal for July or for June, and you are worried that it may look strong on paper but still fail under evaluator scrutiny, this is exactly why I created this Grant Shield pre-mortem. Let's do a pre-mortem of your proposal. Let's assume it's dead, and let's do a pre-mortem before it really dies. It's a structured stress test before submission. So we look at evaluator logic, impact pathway, consortium gap, everything. Now, before submitting, because now the question is not whether your proposal sounds ambitious, it's whether it will survive evaluation. You can find the link in the notes. Let's go to the conversation with Francesco Molica. So, welcome back to InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles. Today's guest is Francesco Molica. He's the director of EURADA, I don't know how to pronounce the acronym. It's the European Association of Development Agencies, and it brings together regional development agencies from across Europe. And it helps them cooperate, advocate, build EU projects, and so on. So its mission is highly relevant for today's Europe's because of the major challenges we are facing, not just national, but at the European level. So Francesco has worked across regional policy practice and research and EU policing. He has experience, for instance, in the European Commission's Joint Research Center, DG Regio, the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, the regional government of Calabria. So he's been around in this area for a great career. And today I'm very eager to discuss with him why regions matter for Europe's competitiveness and how can or what can development agencies do to help the territories navigate these transitions, the twin transitions we are facing and all the other transitions. So thank you very much, Francesco, for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start by asking you to explain to listeners who may not know EURADA very well, how would you describe it and how do you pronounce that?
Well, yeah, I suppose it depends in which language you pronounce it. So it would be EURADA, yeah, if you pronounce it in French or Italian or Spanish, and EURADA in English, indeed. But I would describe it as a network of mostly public or semi-public entities regional development agencies, mostly local and regional development agencies. And what we do is offering a platform indeed to these agencies to come together and discuss joint approaches, exchange knowledge and practices, right? On areas of common interest, on challenges that they face in implementing their missions. But we also represent these actors at EU level before the EU institutions, and therefore we try to make sure that the interests and voice of these actors are also heard of, listened to at EU level by those decision makers at EU level that then have to indeed define and approve vast range of policies that have very important implications in terms of development in terms of the regional development or territorial development and innovation.
Well, tell me, what is the role of these agencies, these organizations today? Why do they matter for Europe's future?
Well, I suppose this answer, I would struggle to provide a univocal answer to this question, because regional development agencies across Europe, they have very different mandates, powers. They are embedded in very different governance frameworks and arrangements. Of course, the common thread is that they have the same mission, which is indeed promoting regional development, particularly by supporting the local and regional entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem, right? But I would say that their role has been changing over time. They are not anymore simply supporting in isolation SMEs or projects, but they are becoming more and more orchestrators of systemic change. What they are doing, what they do more and more is indeed trying to make sure that the overall entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem can go in a certain direction. And they do so by connecting the actors of the system in a certain way, connecting among each other, connecting them to potential investors, for instance, or to other actors like-minded or with similar interests outside the regional context, to make sure that all these actors, their interests and their activities are sort of aligned with a joint vision of territorial development. This is important. We live in an era, in an age of important systemic transformations, and we need actors that can steer at local level this transformation and make sure that it indeed translates into opportunities rather than indeed challenges or indeed negative repercussions. So that's what development agencies do. And of course, in doing this, again, they are not only there to select projects and run R&D subsidies or give funding to SMEs, but they're there also to anticipate what may happen next, to map what are the main opportunities at regional level, what are the emerging technologies or niche technologies that can be indeed embraced, to indeed connect different actors. So it's more sophisticated than it used to be 20 to 30 years ago, I would say.
Well, that's also my experience. I know a lot of these organizations, and they have the same name, but they can be completely different from country to country, and from different regions. They can have completely different characteristics and activities, but they have the same name and they have the same objective. Now, what I'm going to ask you, are they having any results? Are regions actually contributing to Europe's competitiveness and to innovation, to growing innovation?
Well, they are. I would say that they've been doing this all along, right? I would say that contrary to other areas of the world, such as the US, Europe has a much more diversified industrial innovation landscape, meaning that different industries or niche productions are scattered all across the continent, and they are very much embedded in specific local contexts, right? So in order for Europe to become more competitive, also to bridge the innovation and competitiveness gap, for instance, with China and the US, this is a topic that it is at the heart of the current discussions, right, in these days, especially after the Draghi report. We need also to have around the table actors that know very well these local contexts and know what are the needs, know what are the potentiality, what is the potential, what is the competitiveness strength at local level. You cannot just do it top down. If you are sitting in a capital region or in Brussels, you may not know what's happening on the ground. And there comes the regions, the regional administrations, and the regional development agencies into the picture, in having a critical role in terms of indeed connecting these broad objectives that are defined at EU level and the reality on the ground, which is, again, very much specific. We want to discover the new would say the new frontier technology or the new or the SMEs that might be able to develop this new frontier technology, the new AI, the new quantum computing. You cannot do this again by sitting at 1 kilometer away from the place where this might happen. You need someone who has benefits from geographical proximity and is in constant and regular contact with the local SMEs, firms, innovative startups. Otherwise, this may never happen.
I think that regions are the places where the EU strategies become real or not. Sometimes not. But if you think about the twin transitions that are often present in the EU policies, do you think there's a risk that these transitions will increase territorial inequality between regions?
This is a very good question. They can. There is this risk for the simple reason that there are regions that are more and better equipped to embrace the opportunities of these transitions, whilst others might feel more, let's say, significantly the negative externalities. I mean, a region that it is home to a region which is mostly specialized in carbon-intensive sector might, of course, be more negatively impacted by this transition. But this does not mean that these regions shouldn't transition or they will not be able to transition. Much depends on what kind of policies will be deployed to help these regions to transition, which means indeed more funding, which means indeed more compensatory measures, which means more tailored strategies, because of course you cannot expect these regions, you cannot expect to adopt a one-size-fits-all approach that is largely then defined with more developed regions in mind to help these region transitions. And there again, the role of regions, regional administrations, and regional development agencies, I would say, is crucial. I think it's also a matter of making sure that this happen at different speeds, because you cannot expect all regions to transition all at once at the same time with the same speed. Again, so I would of course argue for a let's say approach that it is differentiated here and very much place-based, therefore.
Okay, so let me go back to the regional development agencies. the things they can do that neither the national ministries or the individual firms can do are a result of proximity to the ecosystems
Yeah.
and the proximity to decision centers on the other hand. And that's when often EU-funded projects are an instrument. Now, my question is, can these EU-funded projects really produce impact in the territories? Because very often they have very ambitious objectives on paper, but then we struggle to see the impact on the territories. What makes an EU project really useful for regional development, in your experience, of course?
Yes. Well, first of all, we often fail to appreciate and to grasp the impact of projects because then these impacts take some time to fully emerge. Because of course it's not a single project that makes a good regional development story. It takes many more. But I would say that what's important, I mean, a number of ingredients that need to be there. First, the project needs to be selected, not with the regulation in mind, but with the territorial vision in mind. In many cases, unfortunately, projects are selected just because they are compliant with the objectives of the regulation or a number of rules that are there. But projects need to be part of, as I said, a broader vision. And also, what happens is that projects are selected in a disjuncted way, one from the other. Whereas what we should do more and more is today think, bearing in mind that they need to be connected one to the other, complementary. They need to be part of, again, a joint objective. So that's why we are discussing more and more about this portfolio approach, right? When it comes to financing projects, EU funding projects, and then they should be able to generate permanent knowledge and expertise on the ground, and knowledge and expertise that in principle should then spill over to other entities, so beyond the beneficiary itself of the project. That's exactly how you build a good regional development or an effective regional development trajectory path. Now, I mean, this is the theory. In practice, there are a number of factors on the ground that are critically influencing whether a good project may then result in meaningful contribution in terms of regional development or not. And this is, let's say, irrespective of whether you are picking a good or a bad project. So I think we should not only concentrate on projects, but also on the framework conditions that help a project become a great success story in terms of regional development. And these conditions are well known: institutional quality, of course, education levels, strong innovation ecosystems, and many other types of endowments that are important in terms of regional development. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we had the chief statistician of OECD in the podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and his reply to a similar question was very much focusing on you don't measure everything. You cannot measure everything. And very often when you talk about impact, how are you going to measure it? And the project itself is just one of the elements that is changing in the environment. So are you sure the change in the environment is the result of the project or is the result of other factors? it all depends on what you're measuring. So really measuring impact for EU projects is something special. But let me move on to the SMEs and startups, the ones that are supposed to innovate, digitalize, decarbonize, do so many things, internationalize. What do they need the regional ecosystems to get them, to help them to make all that possible?
Well, definitely they don't only need money, right? Because that's only one side of the story. The people tend to focus on that, but that's not only what they need. They need contacts. They need to be able to connect to other actors that are in the same operating in the same area, or in areas that are related, or areas that are part of the same value chain, because innovation is at its core an interactive learning process. So you learn by well, talking to other actors, agents, peers. And if you cannot do it, if you're not able to do it, because there are a number of structural barriers, because you may not know whether there are actors from which you can learn out there. So it's a matter of matchmaking here, because you are simply too distant from other actors from which you can learn, right? Because you do not have enough money or strength in general to join these types of networks. Because I mean, also innovation collaboration might be costly, right? If you cannot do it, then the knowledge spillovers cannot happen, technology transfer cannot happen, and good ideas cannot be translated into good innovation or commercial endeavor, right? So in that respect, regional development agencies are playing a very important role in making sure that these gaps are addressed. And this is a real problem, an actual problem in Europe. There are studies, for instance, showing that there are great complementarities in terms of across Europe, in terms of firms. For instance, in the areas that pertain to the two transitions, the digital and green transitions. But there are not enough collaborations that are happening. So there is a huge potential that is there, and it is clearly untapped. And this applies also to less developed regions, because less developed regions, they may have also important functions in EU value chains, although perhaps not in the most complex part or value-added part of the value chains. But still, value chains are quite big and diversified.
No, following that thought, we now hear Europe and the European Commission speak a lot about new buzzwords: strategic autonomy, resilience, industrial capacity. Don't you fear that this agenda will contribute to concentrate resources in the already powerful hubs and increase the imbalance with the less developed regions?
Yeah, this is a risk, definitely. And this is a risk that it is now currently perceived across many less developed areas, regions, that feel somehow that this new emphasis on strategic autonomy, security, might indeed then translate into more regional disparities, or indeed concentrating more funding in more developed and more innovative regions, because these regions, they would have indeed the capacity also to indeed absorb effectively these funds for these new priorities. However, I would also tend to see this also as creating opportunities for less developed regions, because strategic autonomy means not only, for instance, being more or less dependent on third countries in terms of very complex or frontier technologies, right? But it's also about manufacturing these technologies, for which you need components that require materials, raw materials that might sit in less developed regions, and also an expertise in terms of manufacturing, which might also be scattered across many regions. For instance, all the industrial regions that have been declining for many years, but also less developed regions. And this is not only about technology, this is also about other aspects. Think of energy and food security. And there one can argue that many less innovative or less developed regions can contribute a lot to these two objectives, because they're either specialized in agri-food, so the agri-food sector represents a significant share of their economies, or as it is the case of my region, Calabria, they have a great potential in terms of clean energies that can be tapped. In the case of Mediterranean regions, think of the solar energy. So, I mean, the most important thing is that one sees this issue and these priorities that are there and need to be delivered from a territorial angle, of course. So trying to understand how all regions, all territories can contribute to it, right? Which is probably not how the European Union is, let's say, approaching the problem or approaching the issue in this very moment. It is doing it in a very top-down way, without really taking into account the diversity of regions. And this indeed might result in the mistake of allocating too much funding on a limited number of well-developed regions at the expense of the rest.
No, that's the right time to ask you this next question. Let's talk about the future of cohesion policy, and because there's a new EU budget cycle coming.
Yes.
So what should Europe protect, reform, or rethink in regional policy after 2027, in your opinion?
So I think what Europe should have done is to make simplify definitely the rules, make them more rigid, less audit or compliance oriented, leaving more leeway to regions to experiment with the funds, right? But overall, the framework that was in place, in my opinion, despite some, of course, flaws, but I mean, all policies in a way have flaws, right? Was quite fine and effective, despite criticism about the impact of the policy. The policy, again, we go back to what the chief statistician of the OECD was saying. I mean, it's difficult to measure the impact. I mean, it may be much bigger than what macroeconomic data are telling us, right? And of course, macroeconomic results, they do not only depend on whether a policy is effective or not, or a specific policy. I mean, this policy operates in conjunction with many other policies, and there are also structural trends that are sort of affecting the impact of this policy too, which may not depend on us, right? Instead, the European Commission decided to go for a more centralized policy, right? For reforming the policy in a direction that essentially has a more centralized governance, and also is more sectoral than place-based. Now, this is again the sign that there are new priorities out there that need to be financed, and cohesion policy has been also reoriented toward financing these priorities. The risk is that the new cohesion policy is going to widen the regional disparities instead of addressing them. So I would content myself with a cohesion policy that is more similar to what cohesion policy is now, right? Compared to the reform. So I don't think a big reform was in this direction was needed, to be honest.
Okay. Okay, so I don't want to abuse your time, so I'll ask you a final question about the future. If you look at the next 3 to 5 years, are you optimistic about Europe's regions? And in a way, what should the regional development agencies, the local leaders, the firms do if they want to move faster, move earlier, rather than react too late?
Yes, also, this is a very difficult question. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, the future used to be much more predictable than it is today, right? That's why we
Absolutely.
are now, for instance, in the context of sociology, there's a revival of future studies, and but just to indeed focusing on the fact that I mean we are living in a sort of historical time where the future there are way too many possible or potential futures, so it is difficult to predict in which direction we are going. But that's exactly the point. I mean, what regional development agencies should do more, and what they are starting to do right now, more and more, is doing foresight. And foresight means also disentangling and identifying what are the different future scenarios that might unfold in the coming years. And acting in such a way to build resilience vis-à-vis these potential scenarios if they are negative or not very positive. And anyway tend to be optimistic about the future of regions in Europe, because the current emphasis on top-down approaches will clearly not yield the expected results. And in any case, then in order to implement the new priorities that are emerging now, both the national and the European level would always need a critical expertise and know-how that they do not have, and that sits within the regional administrations or regional development agencies. I think it's only a matter of time before they realize, or rather re-realize this. So I tend to be optimistic about this.
About the future, don't you think, that's my theory, don't you think we are missing utopias or dystopias? I remember a past where people had this idea that in the future we're going to build a better society, this better society. Don't you think we are missing that nowadays? People don't see where we are going or where we should be going to. Don't you think we need a new utopia?
Definitely so. Well, utopia, I don't know, but at least we need more imaginaries and visions. And this is what is happening in some territories. There's also a strand of economic geography that it is studying this phenomenon, right? But I agree, and unfortunately, this is l'air du temps, meaning that the current also system is such that we are so flooded with information and events that we seem not to be able to look ahead of us. Yeah. So yeah, I agree.
Overloaded with too much information about today.
About today. So yes, it's like we are trapped into an eternal and perpetual present, which prevents us from thinking about the future, from thinking ahead. And this is unfortunately very much also present in the political conversations that are taking place these days, that are going essentially from a short-term priority to another.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what cohesion policy, a regional policy, is not, or what the main or core business of regional development agencies is not, because the core business of regional development agencies is long-term planning, right? So it's making the life of everyone much more difficult. This context.
Well, Francesco, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. I think we can end with some positive, hopeful idea about the future, because as you said, even if we are too much focused on top-down policies, it's a matter of time before that comes down to the reality of regions, and that's why we need EURADA and the European Regional Development Agencies anyway. So thank you very much. And
thank you, Fernando, for having me.
See you soon. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Let me pull out just two strategic lessons from this conversation. The first one is simple, but it is often forgotten. Regions turn EU priorities into real ecosystems. A strategy written in Brussels is still abstract. A cold topic is still abstract. A transition is still an abstract concept. They become real when local firms, universities, public authorities, development agencies, everyone start moving in the same direction. When ecosystems do the work. That is why Francesco insists on proximity. Lesson number 2, SMEs and startups need ecosystems, not just money. Funding matters, yeah, money matters, of course, but money alone does not create innovation. Firms need contacts, they need access to value chains, they need matchmaking, knowledge spillovers, actors who can connect them to peers, investors, technologies, markets, everything. Okay, if this conversation helped you rethink your own proposal, consortium, regional strategy, or innovation project, please subscribe to InnovEU, share this episode with someone working on EU funding, and please leave a comment with your own view, whatever platform you're using. There's always a common function. So do Europe's regions have enough power in the next phase of EU competitiveness? What do you think? Or are they still designing too much from the center, from Brussels? Thank you for watching. And remember, because Europe's transitions are already reshaping our future, and your project can be a part of the story. See you next week.